Picture this: a farm in the middle of Iowa, flat fields, a straight road, visibility stretching for miles. The owner steps out to the barn to check a lock, to be back in a minute, but he never comes back. No footprints leading away, no sound of an engine, no phone call. The dogs reach the barn and stop, as if there is nowhere left to go. Police find the keys, the papers, the cash, everything exactly as it was. A tire track that doesn't exist in any catalog, a phone disconnected for a week, suddenly busy, all night, and not a single explanation. What did Ethan see in the dark that made him not return? Who keeps placing clues when the case is already closed? And why has the farm where Ethan Collins disappeared become a place even the police won't go back to? The Collins farm, 3 miles from the nearest town of Clarkville, was ringed by cornfields stretching to the horizon. At 10:14 p.m., a neighbor half a mile away spotted a light in the Collins barn. Dim, but steady, as though someone had switched on a single bulb. Nothing unusual. Farmers often work late, especially in the middle of the season. But by midnight, the light was still on. And by morning, the farm had gone silent. Ethan Collins, 27 years old, vanished that night. He was never seen again. On the evening of June 27th, Ethan was home, alone. His wife, Kate, had gone to her parents in the neighboring county, taking their 2-year-old daughter. Phone records show that at 9:32 p.m., Ethan spoke with Kate on the landline. The call lasted 7 minutes. Kate later told police Ethan was calm and mentioned he was going to check the barn. Earlier that day, he had noticed a broken lock on one of the doors. He said he'd be back at the phone in half an hour to wish their daughter good night. That call was never made. When Kate tried calling again at 10:45 p.m., the line was busy. Later it was confirmed the phone in the Collins home worked, but the receiver had been left off the hook. The next morning, June 28th, neighbor John Martin came to the farm, concerned that the gates, usually closed, were standing wide open. Ethan's pickup, an old 1989 Ford F-150, was parked by the house. The keys sat on the kitchen table next to his wallet containing $43 and a driver's license. The barn, about 30 meters from the house, had its door ajar. Inside, police found an overturned toolbox, several wrenches scattered across the dirt floor, and marks that might suggest a brief struggle. Ethan's boot prints, Red Wing, size 10, led from the house to the barn and stopped at the entrance. No tracks led away. And then, another detail. On the driveway, 15 meters from the barn, investigators found a tire track. It did not match Ethan's truck. The tread was deep, with an unusual pattern no one could match to any manufacturer in local databases. The tire track ended after only a few meters, as if the vehicle had simply vanished, leaving no other marks on the dry dirt road. The weather that night was clear, with no rain, ruling out any chance that the tracks had been washed away. Dogs, brought to the scene 12 hours later, circled the barn, but picked up no scent of Ethan or of anyone else. The police report, completed within 1 day, recorded neighbor John Martin's statement. He claimed that around 10:30 p.m. he heard a sound like the slam of the barn door, but didn't think much of it. Other neighbors interviewed later had neither heard nor seen anything. In the case file, there's a short note from the duty officer. Collins' phone line occupied from 22:45 hours until 3:12 a.m., cause unknown. That contradicted the telephone company's records, which confirmed the line had been disconnected for non-payment a full week before the disappearance. None of the investigators could explain how the line could be busy if the phone was physically out of service. Ethan Collins that night was dressed in a blue flannel shirt, Levi's jeans, and Red Wing boots. His jacket was still hanging in the house. Odd for a nighttime trip to the barn in late June, when temperatures dropped to 15 degrees Celsius. Inside the barn, nothing suggested a robbery. The tools, tractor parts, and fuel drums were untouched. The only clues, an overturned toolbox and the tire track, gave no answers. Police began their investigation treating it as a possible abduction. But within the very first hours, the case started producing questions no one could answer. Ethan Collins was born in Clarkville, Mason County, Iowa. The youngest of 3 children in a farming family, he had inherited the land from his grandfather, an immigrant from Ireland. The Collins farm, 120 acres, specialized in corn and soybeans. Ethan had known since childhood that he would continue the family work. Neighbors and friends described him as a hard-working, even-tempered man who rarely raised his voice, even in arguments. 5 feet 10 inches tall, solid build, light blonde hair always kept short, and a habit of wearing flannel shirts tucked into jeans. He fit the image of a typical rural Iowan, but in his habits and character were details that later caught the investigators' attention. Ethan graduated from the local high school with good marks, but college was not his path. He chose the farm. By age 18, he was operating the tractor and managing harvest records. In 1990, he married Kate Morgan, his high school sweetheart. In 1993, their daughter Emma was born. Kate worked as an administrator at a clinic in nearby Waverly. Her steady income helped when the farm was operating at a loss. By Kate's account, Ethan was a devoted father, driving Emma to preschool every morning and on weekends, crafting wooden toys for her. Financially, the family was struggling. In 1994, Ethan took out a loan from the local bank, $25,000, to buy a new combine. But drought and a drop in corn prices led to debt. By June of 1995, he owed the bank $18,000. Overdue payments brought calls from creditors. Neighbor John Martin later told police that Ethan had mentioned feeling pressure from the bank, but never seemed depressed by it. He said he'd figure a way out, like he always did, Martin recalled. Still, the case file contains a note about a call from the bank 2 days before the disappearance, where a representative allegedly threatened to seize part of his land. Kate claimed Ethan never told her such details, not wanting to worry her. Ethan was a man of habit. Every morning he rose at 5:30 a.m., drank black coffee without sugar, checked the fields, and returned for breakfast. In the evenings, he often worked in the barn, repairing equipment, sorting tools. His toolbox, found overturned the night he vanished, was his pride, every wrench in its place. And Ethan grew angry if anyone took them without asking. Friends remarked on his meticulousness, how he always locked the farm gates even if leaving for an hour, and never left his keys in the truck. That's why, on the morning of June 28th, open gates and keys on the table surprised the neighbors. There were other oddities surfacing in conversations after the disappearance. Kate mentioned that in the weeks before June 27th, he had begun stepping out to the barn at night, sometimes without explanation. She thought he was worried about the equipment, but one night she noticed him standing outside the barn with a flashlight, staring into the field, though nothing seemed to be happening. Neighbor Marge Lynn reported seeing Ethan a week before he vanished. He was driving his pickup down a dirt road at 11 o'clock at night, unusual for him as he rarely left the farm after dark. When she asked if everything was fine, Ethan replied, "Just checking." Where he was headed remains unknown. Ethan avoided conflict, but had clashed in the past with local farmer Roy Jensen over property lines. In 1993, Jensen filed a complaint claiming Ethan had placed a fence incorrectly. But the matter was settled without trouble. Police investigated Jensen, but he had a confirmed alibi for the night of the disappearance. One more detail. Ethan kept a ledger of farm expenses. Kate found it after he was gone. The last entry, dated June 26th, read, "Check account, $200. No account or transaction for that amount was found in the house or at the bank. Kate had no idea what it meant. Ethan's social life was quiet. He regularly attended the local church, played poker with friends once a month, and occasionally went to the Waverly Fair. He drank rarely, never used drugs, and had no criminal record. The only mark on Ethan's record was a speeding ticket in 1991 when he was driving his pickup into the neighboring county. Friends and family agreed on one thing. Ethan was not a man who would run from his problems or get mixed up in dangerous dealings. His life revolved around the farm, his family, and the land he promised to pass down to his daughter. But the small oddities, the nighttime trips outside, the mysterious note in the ledger, the stare into an empty field, left questions no one could answer. The Collins farm in Mason County, Iowa, covered 120 acres of flat corn and soybean fields. 3 miles to the east lay the town of Clarkville, population about 1,400. The nearest major road, Iowa Highway 188, ran 5 miles to the north. The landscape was classic Midwest, endless farmland, broken only by dirt roads and the occasional fence. In June of 1995, when Ethan Collins disappeared, the corn in the field stood about 1 meter high, tall enough to walk through, but not tall enough to hide a man of 5 feet 10. A disappearance in such open space seemed impossible, and the location itself became one of the case's greatest mysteries. The property was a rectangular plot. The Collins home, a single-story wooden house built in the 1960s, stood in the center. 30 meters west of the house stood the barn, wood, tin-roofed, where Ethan kept tools and repaired equipment. The barn had 1 door and 2 small windows, both found closed the night he vanished. To the south, the barn opened onto a gravel drive leading to a dirt road that connected the farm to neighboring properties. It was on this drive that police found the tire track, the one that did not match Ethan's pickup. There were no forests, ravines, or bodies of water nearby that could hide a person or hinder a search. The nearest stream, Mason Creek, lay 2 miles to the west, and in June of 1995 was shallow, no more than 30 centimeters deep. The area around the farm offered nothing to explain how a person could vanish here without a trace. The fields were plowed and planted, their surfaces smooth, no pits, no brush. As volunteers noted, the corn could not conceal an adult, even if he lay down flat. The dirt roads leading away from the farm were patrolled within the first hours of the search, and no tire marks were found other than that single track. The nearest gas station and store in Clarkville were too far to reach on foot in a short time. The bus stop on Highway 188 operated only in daylight, and on the night of the disappearance, no buses were running. Police reports emphasized another detail about the location. There were simply no places to hide. Within a radius of 3 miles, there were no abandoned houses, barns, or warehouses that could serve as shelter. The only old silo belonging to a neighboring farmer was checked on the first day of the search and found empty. Mason Creek, despite its proximity, posed no hazard. Its width was no more than 2 meters, and its banks were open. No trees, no brush. The search dogs were taken along the creek, but found no traces of Ethan or any piece of his clothing. The social environment around the farm made the disappearance stranger still. Clarkville was a small town. Everyone knew everyone. Ethan was a local. His family had lived in the county for decades. A stranger showing up on the farm would not have gone unnoticed. Neighbors interviewed by police insisted that in June of 1995 they had not seen any suspicious cars or people in the area. John Martin, the closest neighbor, regularly drove past the Collins property and said he would have noticed if anyone unfamiliar had appeared there at night. Even so, police notes preserved one odd detail. One of the volunteers, while searching the fields on the second day, found a torn cigarette pack. Pall Mall. Ethan didn't smoke, and Kate confirmed there were no such cigarettes in the house. The pack was never logged as evidence, but remained mentioned in the file. The Collins farm, with its open setting and lack of natural cover, seemed like the last place where an adult could simply vanish. Fields, dirt roads, and sparse structures made it an environment where any trace, a boot print, the sound of an engine, should have been noticed. But Ethan Collins disappeared, leaving only an overturned toolbox in the barn, a tire track that led nowhere, and a busy phone line that should not have existed. This location, so simple, so familiar, became the very first reason to believe this case did not fit ordinary logic. On the morning of June 28, 1995, the Mason County Sheriff received a call from Ethan's neighbor, John Martin, reporting that the farm looked abandoned and the gates were open. By 9 a.m., 2 officers had arrived on the scene and begun their inspection. The overturned toolbox in the barn, possible signs of a struggle, and the unusual tire print on the gravel drive immediately led police to consider abduction. Ethan's financial troubles, known around Clarkville, became the basis of the main theory. Someone had taken him over a debt, perhaps to threaten or to demand ransom. It seemed a logical hypothesis, backed by tangible clues. But within the first days of the investigation, questions began to emerge. Questions no one could ignore. The marks in the barn seemed to support the abduction theory. The overturned toolbox, several wrenches on the floor, and scratches in the dirt that could indicate a struggle. The crime scene expert from Waverly noted that the marks might have been made by boots, but the patterns were too chaotic to tie definitively to Ethan. Ethan's Red Wing size 10 boot prints led from the house to the barn and stopped at the entrance. If he'd been dragged away, there should have been more prints, his or those of the abductors. But nothing was found except for that strange tire track, deep, clear, and belonging to a tread unlisted in the Michelin, Goodyear, or Firestone catalogs available in Iowa. This led police to suspect that the vehicle might have been rare or brought in from another state. In the first 24 hours, officers also examined the Collins phone line. Kate reported that at 10:45 p.m., when she tried to call, the line was busy. Officers confirmed that the phone in the house was off the hook, but could not explain why the line remained engaged until 3:12 a.m., as recorded in the duty log. The phone company later stated that service had been shut off for non-payment since June 20th, making an engaged signal technically impossible. This detail did not fit the abduction theory, but police set it aside, focusing on more tangible evidence. Investigators began canvassing the locales. Clarkville was a small town where news traveled fast, and by the evening of June 28th, everyone knew Ethan was missing. Several people mentioned that in May of 1995, a strange black sedan had been seen in the county, moving slowly along dirt roads. One farmer, living 2 miles from the Collins property, claimed he saw a similar car on June 26th around 8 p.m., but did not get the plates. Police issued an alert for the vehicle, but no gas station or Waverly security camera recorded anything similar. This lead, promising at first, went nowhere. The abduction theory still felt convincing. Financial pressure, signs of struggle, the strange tire print, rumors of an unknown car. It formed a picture in which Ethan might have been taken over debt or for personal revenge. Police sent a request to the bank to see if anyone had hired debt collectors and began compiling lists of locals with criminal records. In those early days, no one doubted that the case would be solved quickly. But even then, the small contradictions, the boot prints that stopped, the busy line, the unidentified tire, suggested this version might not survive close scrutiny. By the evening of June 28, 1995, Ethan Collins' disappearance had become Clarkville's biggest news. Mason County Sheriff's Office assembled a task force of 6 officers, joined by 2 detectives from Waverly. The abduction over debt theory remained the priority. Police launched a large-scale search, bringing in volunteers, tracking dogs, and even a helicopter to sweep the fields. In the first 72 hours, the investigation moved at full pace. Bank accounts checked, phone calls traced, gas station footage reviewed, Ethan's contacts and possible witnesses questioned. But the deeper the detectives dug, the more details surfaced that refused to fit a neat, logical crime scene narrative. The search began at the Collins farm. On June 29th, about 50 volunteers, mostly local farmers and Clarkville residents, swept the fields within a radius of 3 miles. The corn, standing about 1 meter high, was inspected row by row. No sign of Ethan, no clothing, no shoes, no blood was found. 2 search dogs from Butler County, trained to locate people, worked the barn, the house, and the gravel driveway. They followed Ethan's boot prints confidently from the house to the barn. But at the barn's entrance, both dogs stopped, losing the scent. This puzzled the handlers. Even if Ethan had been carried or driven away, the dogs should have picked up his trail beyond the barn. One handler noted in his report that the dog seemed uncertain, as if the scent had simply ended. Police focused on the on-scene evidence. The tire track on the gravel drive, one that did not match Ethan's pickup, was sent for further analysis at the state lab in Des Moines. Experts confirmed that the tread did not match any tire model sold in Iowa in 1995. This strengthened the theory of an out-of-town abductor. But the absence of any additional tire marks on the dirt road raised questions. If a vehicle had taken Ethan away, it should have left tracks leading toward the main road, but the road was clean, and the dry weather ruled out erosion. The overturned toolbox in the barn and the scratches on the floor were also examined. The expert from Waverly suggested the struggle might have been brief, but found no blood, no hair, no fabric fibers to indicate violence. The financial line became the next thread. Police reviewed Ethan's and Kate's bank accounts. Their joint account at First National held $312. No significant withdrawals or transfers in June were recorded. The $18,000 loan Ethan had fallen behind on was controlled by the bank, but investigators found no proof the bank had hired debt collectors. A bank representative questioned on June 30th confirmed they had limited their actions to calls and letters, and that the threat of land seizure was only verbal, never formalized. Ethan's ledger entry, check account, $200, was also investigated. But neither the bank nor Kate had any record of such an account. It looked like a dead end. Still, police noted Ethan might have held unofficial debts Kate didn't know about. The Collins phone line remained a mystery. Police contacted GTE, the company serving the county. Technicians confirmed the line had been shut off for non-payment on June 20th, but could not explain why the duty officer's logs showed it busy from 10:45 p.m. to 3:12 a.m. on the night of the disappearance. One investigator suggested someone might have physically tapped into the line, but inspection of the wiring showed no signs of tampering. Kate provided her own call records. Her attempt to reach Ethan at 10:45 p.m. did, in fact, return a busy signal. This detail didn't fit the abduction theory, but police set it aside, deciding it might be a technical glitch. Rumors of a black sedan seen in May and June led police to review footage from gas stations and stores in Waverly. The only working camera, at a Shell station on Iowa Highway 188, showed that on June 27th, only local drivers passed through. No sedans. Police also questioned auto shop owners in the county, but none had serviced a vehicle with unusual tires resembling the track found on the Collins property. Roy Jensen, the farmer who had previously clashed with Ethan, was questioned again. His truck was inspected, but had not left his garage on the night of the disappearance, confirmed by an oil stain on the floor untouched since the previous week. Volunteers continued searching until July 2nd, expanding the radius to 5 miles. They checked Mason Creek, the old silo, and an abandoned barn 3 miles from the farm. Nothing was found except for the same torn Pall Mall cigarette pack discovered earlier in the field. Kate confirmed Ethan did not smoke and no such cigarettes were kept in the house. The pack, crumpled and faded, held no fingerprints and was never officially entered into evidence. One volunteer noted he had found it 200 meters from the barn, off the beaten path rarely traveled. Police also reviewed records of individuals with criminal histories in the county, but none had any connection to Ethan. By July 3rd, the investigation was starting to stall. The abduction theory still appeared plausible, but the evidence was too thin. Signs of a struggle in the barn went unconfirmed by forensics. The dogs found no scent trail. Bank accounts stayed silent, and the rumors of the sedan produced no leads. Police had been hoping for a ransom call, but the Collins phone, reconnected on June 29th, remained silent. A detective from Waverly wrote in his report, "The case is complicated by the lack of new evidence. No one was calling it a dead end yet, but the first cracks in the abduction overdebt theory had begun to show." By July 5, 1995, the investigation into Ethan Collins' disappearance, which had begun with confidence in a debt-related kidnapping, was running into immovable barriers. The Mason County Sheriff's Office, volunteers, and Waverly detectives had spent a week searching, analyzing evidence, and vetting suspects. But every step seemed to push them further from the truth. Leads that looked convincing at first glance. The alleged struggle in the barn, the unusual tire track, Ethan's financial problems, were falling apart under the weight of facts that left no room for a clean criminal explanation. The disappearance of a farmer in Iowa was beginning to lose all logic. And for the first time, investigators began to admit they didn't know what to do next. The abduction theory rested on Ethan's financial troubles. His $18,000 debt to First National Bank seemed like a motive. But by July 4th, police had received the bank's complete records. No evidence was found of debt collectors being hired or of threats of physical harm. A bank representative, questioned again, showed their correspondence with Ethan. The letters were formal. The calls, including one made on June 25th, were limited to overdue payment warnings. The bank had not initiated land seizure, and in its history, there were no cases of bringing in outside parties to pressure debtors. Moreover, in Clarkville, where everyone knew each other, no one had heard of collectors operating in the county. The financial motive, once obvious, proved empty. The traces in the barn, which police initially saw as signs of a struggle, also failed under scrutiny. Analysis at the Des Moines State Lab showed the scratches on the dirt floor could have been made earlier, possibly from moving heavy crates, and not on the night of the disappearance. The overturned toolbox, suspicious as it seemed, held no blood, no foreign fingerprints, no unknown hair. The analysis of Ethan's boots, kept in the house, confirmed that the prints at the barn were his. But their sudden stop at the entrance remained unexplained. If Ethan had been dragged away, there should have been tracks from others or clear signs of dragging. But nothing of the sort was found. A detective from Waverly noted in his report, "The scene in the barn looks staged, but lacks any evidence confirming violence." Checks on suspects also produced nothing. Roy Jensen, the farmer who had clashed with Ethan, had a solid alibi confirmed by his wife and a neighbor. His truck never left the garage, and his tire treads did not match the track found. Police reviewed locals with criminal records, but none had any connection to Ethan or his farm. Rumors of the black sedan, seen in May and June, were checked against stolen car databases and camera records. No lead matched. In Clarkville, where strangers drew attention, no one reported suspicious individuals on the night of the disappearance, except for John Martin, who had heard the slam of the barn door. The Collins phone line, busy on the night of the disappearance, only deepened the confusion. GTE, the phone company, sent a technician on July 3rd. He examined the lines and equipment. No signs of tampering or unauthorized hookup were found. The technician confirmed the line had been disconnected on June 20th and could not have been active. The busy signal noted by the duty officer, lasting from 10:45 p.m. to 3:12 a.m., had no technical explanation. Police pulled phone records for the entire county, but not a single number was found to have connected with the Collins line that night. This anomaly didn't fit the abduction theory and remained in the case file as unexplained. The search, continuing until July 7th, covered a radius of 10 miles. A helicopter swept the fields, the creek, and neighboring farms, finding nothing suspicious. Volunteers combed Mason Creek and abandoned structures, returning empty-handed. The Pall Mall cigarette pack found in the field yielded no leads. Too old, no prints, no connection to Ethan. Kate, questioned again, confirmed Ethan had no habit of leaving home without notice and no reason to hide debts. His bank account, pickup truck, and belongings remained untouched, ruling out voluntary disappearance. By July 10th, police reduced the search team. The sheriff, in an interview with the local paper, admitted, "We have no evidence supporting a crime." The abduction theory, once solid, collapsed. No body, no ransom demand, no witnesses, no motive. Ethan Collins vanished in open ground, leaving tracks that led nowhere and evidence that explained nothing. The investigation had stalled, and the case file began to accumulate notes that no one wanted to discuss out loud. By mid-July 1995, the investigation had lost all direction. The abduction theory, plausible in the first days, had collapsed under the weight of missing evidence, absent witnesses, and no motive. Police stood down search groups. Volunteers returned to their routines, leaving Kate Collins and her daughter alone in the empty farmhouse. But the case file also began to contain entries that didn't fit the framework of a normal investigation. Odd discoveries, conflicting witness statements, unexplained details never entered into the official record, all creating the sense that Ethan's disappearance was something more than a simple crime. These anomalies, though never part of the public reports, remained in officers' notes and in the talk of local residents. One of the first strange finds was made by a volunteer on July 8th, the 10th day of the search. In a field 50 kilometers south of the Collins farm near the town of Eldon, a farmer helping in the search found a wrench identical to those Ethan kept in his toolbox. The wrench, a 17-millimeter Craftsman, was clean, unrusted, lying by the edge of a dirt road as if it had just been dropped. Kate confirmed Ethan used such tools, but police could not explain how it ended up so far from the farm. Ethan had not driven to Eldon in June, his pickup had not left the farm, and volunteers inspecting the fields had not transported anything like it. In the report of the officer who collected the wrench, a short note appeared. Origin of item not established. The wrench was never entered into evidence, but rumors of it spread among locals. Another anomaly concerned the Collins phone line. The problem of the busy signal on the night of the disappearance, from 10:45 p.m. to 3:12 a.m., was troubling enough, given that service had been disconnected for non-payment since June 20th. But on July 12th, a GTE technician conducting a follow-up inspection of the Collins phone equipment told investigators that the company's internal system log recorded an outgoing call from the Collins number at 11:07 p.m. on June 27th. The call lasted 14 seconds. It was directed to a non-existent number in an area code that didn't appear anywhere in GTE's database. The technician suggested it might be a system error, but could not explain how a disconnected line could initiate an outbound call. Police requested more details, but the company provided nothing further, stating there were no additional records. In the case file, this information remained as a handwritten note. Call not confirmed. Source unknown. Witness accounts only added to the confusion. John Martin, the neighbor who had originally mentioned hearing the slam of the barn door around 10:30 p.m., on a second interview, July 10th, added that he had also seen a flash of light in the field behind the barn, like the beam of a flashlight. He hadn't thought it important at the time, but now said the light moved erratically, as if someone were searching for something in the dark. Other neighbors living within a mile reported seeing nothing. and with the moon in its new phase, the field would have been almost invisible without a strong light source. Police examined the field, but found no footprints, no depressions, no objects that might have drawn attention. The note about the light entered the file, but without official status. Martin couldn't swear to the exact time or direction. Another detail emerged during a second inspection of the barn. On July 18th, an officer checking the building at Kate's request noticed a carved inscription on a wooden beam inside. It read, EC95. The letters, about 3 centimeters high, looked fresh. Kate insisted Ethan had never carved initials into the beams. She also claimed she had not seen the inscription when she cleaned the barn after his disappearance. Police photographed the carving but opted not to have it analyzed, deciding it could have been an old mark overlooked before. However, conversations with neighbors revealed that the Collins barn had been renovated in 1990, and back then there had been no carvings on any of the beams. This detail, excluded from the official report, fed local rumors that something unexplainable was happening on the farm. Finally, the case files recorded another troubling phone anomaly. On July 30th, a GTE employee conducting an equipment audit in the county reported finding another call from the Collins number, dated June 29th, 2 days after the disappearance. The call lasted 6 seconds. It was placed to the same non-existent number as in the night of June 27th. The phone line, remember, had been disconnected since June 20th, and the farm had been under police watch, making the call impossible. The technician noted it could have been a system glitch, but could not provide logs as the data had been overwritten. Police recorded the information, but chose not to investigate, citing lack of resources. These details, tools turning up tens of kilometers away, cryptic ledger notes, a figure seen in the field, a carving in the barn, calls made from a dead phone line, didn't fit into a conventional criminal case. The police, out of leads, ignored them. But in Clarkville, people spoke of it less and less, and Kate began avoiding the barn, where it all began. By August 1995, the case was officially classified as cold. Police ended active searches, leaving only a formal request for public information. Kate Collins, with her daughter Emma, moved in with her parents in the next county, unable to remain on the farm where everything reminded her of Ethan. Clarkville, a town used to unity, slipped into silence. Neighbors avoided mentioning the farm. The barn, where this story had started, remained locked. But in the final weeks of summer, with the investigation dormant, 2 final details surfaced in the case. Finds and records that defied any explanation. These facts, never entered into official reports, became the last turning point, leaving more questions than the entire investigation before them. The first discovery came on August 10, 1995, when Kate, returning to the farm to collect her remaining belongings, decided to check the barn. In a corner, behind old barrels, she found a small leather wallet she had never seen before. The wallet, worn but clean, contained $43 in small bills and Ethan's driver's license, dated 1995. Kate was stunned. She claimed this exact wallet had been lying on the kitchen table the morning of the disappearance and had been examined by police in the first hours. How it ended up in the barn, a place searched multiple times by volunteers and officers, no one could explain. Even more disturbing, on the wallet's inner flap was an engraving, EC 270695. Kate insisted this inscription had not been there when she last saw the wallet on June 28th. Police, notified of the find, refused to reopen the search, recording in the file, wallet likely missed in initial inspection. But in Clarkville, people began whispering that the wallet had come back on its own. The second detail concerned a note found in the police archives on August 15th. A young officer, sorting documents, came across an unfiled sheet dated June 30th. It contained an account from the duty officer working the night of June 29th into June 30th. He described a call that came into the station at 2:14 a.m. The caller, a male voice, said, "Everything's fine, don't look," and then hung up. The number traced to the disconnected Collins line. The duty officer, thinking it a prank, never reported it to investigators. But in August, when the record surfaced, police attempted to verify the call data. GTE confirmed that no activity had been recorded on the Collins line after June 20th, and that the June 30th call was technically impossible. The voice on the recording, never saved by the duty officer, remained unverified. But when Kate learned of the call, she claimed that the phrase, "everything's fine," was exactly what Ethan would say when reassuring her over the phone. The case file received a brief note, "Call not confirmed, source unknown." These two details, a wallet reappearing in the barn with a new inscription and a call from a dead phone line speaking Ethan's words, produced not a single lead. The investigation, long dormant, remained closed. Kate, after hearing about the wallet, refused to return to the farm. John Martin stopped walking the road past the Collins fields. In Clarkville, people said less and less, but those who knew about the discoveries kept asking one question: how was this possible? Ethan Collins had vanished, leaving behind tracks that led nowhere and evidence that should not have existed. What began as a routine investigation ended as a paradox no one could explain.